Don't change who you are to fit the circumstances around you.
People just start thinking of themselves too much. If you're thinking of yourself all the time, you're not going to be very good at what you do.
So I've been speaking to quite a few artists who are from the community of people who watch these videos, and one of the main things I've been talking to them about is the journey they've been on and their experience in taking their creative passions, taking their artistic work from inside of their bedrooms or inside their houses and taking it out into the world.
Tyler speaks on the Converse All-Star Series.
I don't get embarrassed, so I'm so okay with failing and up and saying, oh, well, that didn't work, what's next? And surrounding yourself with people like that is the illest.
Sometimes you really just have to pretend to be someone else who's way more confident than you and just do it.
Community artist Chloé speaks on the power of acting your way into an unfamiliar role.
Because I was in charge of this magazine, we would do fashion shows, and everyone would be like, Chloé, what are we doing? And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do this. But suddenly, you become that person. You just trick yourself into believing it.
I'll be forever interested in this process because I don't really care who you are, whether you identify as introvert or extrovert or any other label really. There's a process there. It comes with nerves, it comes with resistance, stepping into a place where you're vulnerable, where you're taking ownership of yourself as an artist, as a creative, and you're standing there ready to be judged.
I think if you're an artist now, you show up and there's a queue outside the door of people who want to tell you what you did and what you made. And I think it takes great courage to create
or stubbornness.
Share it.
I think stubbornness is actually the important value now.
It's a secret ingredient.
I really do. I think more and more, I think the people who make a difference are the ones who just refuse to be deterred.
I'm a very nervous person, but I feel like once I study a lot, I start to get a bit more comfortable with the nerves. What I do to deal with it is just practice.
Community artist Pedro discusses the strategy of specific forms of practice.
Make my environment, my practicing environment, as close as possible to the environment, the live performance one, as close as I can. So yeah, I tried to make a display of the whole stage on my living room, because I started making a mental to-do list, and even a physical one, what do I need to plug in first, and what do I need to make sure that's connected before starting up. And yeah, so just to sum it up, it's just practice makes perfect, I think.
One of my main goals for the channel this year and going forward, I guess, but it was one of the goals that I wrote down for 2025, was just to push out energy from this channel that would make, even if it's just a few artists who are making work in their bedrooms, in private environments, and just push energy out of this channel to make those artists think about taking that work outside, whether it's performing it, whether it's trying to take it to a gallery and see if you can show it in some way in public, performing your art on the street or creating some form of street art, or simply joining up with a community of local artists where you work in a public space with them or collaborate with them. Whatever it is that starts that process of getting your artwork and getting yourself as an artist out of your house. Give people that little nudge to get on with that process. A lot of my audience, along with myself here, are at the stage where they're trying to take their work, their expression out of their house. And to me, street art is a beautiful, immediate example of that. It's one of the most immediate ways we can kind of see that. And you spoke a bit about, or you mentioned something about your journey there in terms of how that felt for you. So I'm just, as someone who's gone through that journey, I'm interested in how that was for you, and you know, around that idea of standing next to your art or doing it in public spaces, and how that journey was basically. Yeah.
I mean, my advice to all creatives is to plant flags. And so what I mean by that is a flag is a chance to get someone into your ecosystem and your world of creativity.
Community artist David speaks on audience building and finding real and powerful connection through street art.
Street art is such a great flag because it's everyone goes outside at some point. So there are people. And if you leave something outside, and I think the versatility of street art, you can make something in your house and then you can go and leave it outside. Mm-hmm. There's so many different ways. Like if you're a writer, there's some people who will write on Post-it notes and leave them on lampposts, or they're like, what's your unique take of how you can take something that you do inside and put it outside? I think a lot of creatives say, like, how do I find my audience? And it's a really difficult question. Like, I think what you do is you put up a beacon of light that speaks about you and the things that you believe in. And then the people who believe that too, they do find that beacon. If it's there and it's shining bright enough and you've planted enough flags and there's enough chances to discover you, then people do start to discover you. And if you're making really fucking great work, then they'll share it and they'll send it to a mate. And it's just this like snowball effect. That's how you grow and that's how things happen. So I mean, just making stuff outside is just another chance to be discovered and just to galvanize those people around you that think and feel the same things that you do.
What mindfulness practices do I use to prepare for high stakes presentation or performances? I would say I don't let fear make me afraid.
Tim Ferriss talks about preparation and closing the door on fear on his podcast.
If you weren't nervous, right, then it would be a bigger problem. It is normal to be nervous before you go up. Like my hands are shaking a little bit. I've done these things hundreds of times and I still get nervous. I still get sweaty. I still drink too much Diet Coke or coffee or whatever beforehand as a ritual, which just makes me more shaky, obviously. And it's like, it's okay. It's fine. Like anyone who's going out to perform at a high level or attempting to do it at a high level is going to be nervous. So just use it. Like Mike Tyson would puke before he went on stage, well, on stage in the ring. Dean Martin used to puke before he went on stage. I mean, these are legends, right? I'm not saying you want to emulate everything about them, but these are people who are at the top of their field. So if it's okay for them, it's okay for you. So I just remind myself of that. And I will rehearse my ass off. There's no mental trick you can do beforehand if you haven't prepared. And for me, the preparation is the mindfulness practice. I mean, with my TED Talk, like I rehearsed it so many times into voice memo on my phone walking around. I mean, hundreds of times. So by the time I got to the day of the presentation on the main stage at TED, I was like, well, I've put in the time, the deliberate practice. I've done everything I can do. So I am as prepared as I will ever be. So let it rip. Let's see what happens. I'd say that's the mindfulness practice.
In the discussions with artists from the community, which I'm going to be sampling in here, and some clips that I've collected too, I've been gathering together these stories about the ways that we might push ourselves out into those spaces, preparation tips to make us feel more secure or in control when we do so, how we can deal with failure or decompress from bad shows or bad experiences perhaps, some of the identity stuff that comes up when we step outside with our work and take ownership, and yeah, just how we can be more comfortable or get on that journey of taking up space and saying, yeah, this is our work and it may encapsulate some of our vulnerability or truth, but it's worthy to be performed or showed within this public space. There's also 2 tips that I've written about and have been useful for my own experience in terms of being on this journey of doing this, and I'm going to put those 2 tips in at the end after we get the kind of meat of the video, which is going to be the clips. One that's quite basic but really practical, and another one which is perhaps the most esoteric thing that I'm going to cover in this video. But for me, if I can grasp it, it's something that kind of really adds a lot of power to the process of pushing me to make those steps. Again, this week there's no sponsor for this video, so I'm really imploring you to come check out the full-length interviews, which are free, over on the newsletter, and I've also posted them on the Patreon. As I say, they're free to access, and these are the full-length conversations with artists and creatives who have followed the Creative Minds videos themselves, just talking to them about all the challenges in their own journeys that kind of resonate with the kind of topics that I cover on this channel. I'm linking the newsletter below. Follow along there. It's all free. You'll get these interviews directly to you. Drop your email address and I won't ever send you any bullshit. Again, at the end of the video, I'll come back with my 2 tips, but let's jump into the meat of this piece now, and start with a conversation that I had with an artist called Stephen, who's from New York, and just him talking a little bit about his journey and how he wants to take his work into a performance space this year.
For me, it's like that duality of like, this song is for fun and this song is for emotion. Comes with 2 different nerves when thinking about performing, for sure. I'm here to try it, and getting past the nerves is definitely something that is super rewarding. So I haven't performed my original, but I have performed. That rush you get once you kind of get past it is so beautiful. Because like I said, some of my friends do music, so going with them and kind of breaking that ice in that way is something I'm looking forward to as like a group thing and a group story to tell. Would you perform your music, and like, what sort of spaces could you see yourself performing?
Yeah, so I'm kind of, there's a similarity here in that it's like open mics. Yeah. So I play piano and sing, but I've got a similar thing of like, when it comes to covers, I'm quite comfortable with that, or I'm way more comfortable. For me, in my songwriting, I can be quite emotional and like quite, you know, when I move around in the world, I'm usually quite polite and a nice person. But in my songwriting, I can be quite, you know, I mean, it's not mean to other people, but it's just a very different vibe. So I'm trying to think how I would approach those spaces with a, you know, one, and try and take ownership over, you know, I'm here to do the art. I'm not here to people please or all that kind of stuff, you know?
Definitely. I think for me, like, I've been practicing performing for since December, just getting into the mode of like reciting these words over this music, but re-reciting the words reminds me like, dang, this is important. And like I like the visceral feeling, because I'm very much the same way, like, hey, how are you? No, like, it's fine. Kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt and letting them be. But
which is a good thing. Which is a good thing.
Which is a
get that
great
right.
thing. That's a great thing. But it's also like,
should be proud of that too.
But like jazz clubs and like open mics or like slam, for example, are the places where it's allocated for you to be a bit more blunt and a bit more, you know, visceral, if you will. So take the space.
I like that. I like that. Thinking about, oh no, this space I don't have to be that.
No,
you know,
and I won't be.
Yeah.
We were venturing outside of the jazz world. We were trying to figure out ways to reach people who didn't typically go to concert halls or jazz venues and think about jazz as something that they enjoyed. It wasn't in the social context for them.
John Baptiste speaks on building confidence and resilience in your identity as an artist.
We stepped on stage. As soon as we played the first note, I remember the audience was like, "Go home! Boo!" And I was like, wait a minute. Maybe we should change what we're doing. And then 5 minutes into trying to change it on the fly, no rehearsal, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna stick to the script. I started playing what we always play, Through the Booze. They started playing, the band got into it, they stuck to it, the crowd was booing, we got louder. They got louder, we got louder. back and forth, until finally, slowly, they all start to clap. And in that moment, in some small dive bar several years ago in Philadelphia, opening for whoever was the hot flavor of that month, I realized something very, very profound. Don't change who you are to fit the circumstances around you. At a certain point, you're gonna be in a place where nobody around you is like you or has your values. But when you reach that point, that's where you embolden them. That's when your values become stronger, and that's when your character really comes to the test. And when you come out on the other side of that, you've really made progress in defining who you are and who you want to be.
Community artist Mahum speaks on the importance of taking up space and building your own sense of legitimacy around your work.
You have to take up space because you spent so much time on your creative practice, and nobody's going to build confidence in you if you can't even fake confidence in yourself. So it's like, for people to give you the time of day, you need to, I think, define your own legitimacy in it. And I think, like, you know, when it first comes to the first 30 people that come in, it is very nerve-wracking for sure. And then I think once you have your pitch, you know, like, this is what XYZ, this is what the work means, this is the title, and everybody's approach to, you know, how to describe their work is very different. I think I can describe my pitch in like under 10 seconds less, explain what I do, how to interact with it, and just like go. But that's been refined because at that point, you start out your first 30 and then you go to 1,000, right? Like, there's a lot of people in that way. And I think to be, you know, and I think the nerves also rile down because when people interact with your work, they're excited to see it. And you also have a lot more connections, right? Let's say if I had a painting and somebody came and interacted with the painting and I was right next to it, there would be a social interaction there. There's an emotional reaction there. And I think that is the best way to calm nerves. I think it's more intimidating in our heads to be like, oh, I'm presenting. And then when you get there, it's actually not that scary.
More and more, I think the people who make a difference are the ones who just refuse to be deterred and who are stubborn. They can't be made to stop. I admire those people.
But a lot of those people also have a vulnerability to them. There's a paradox between sensitivity and stubbornness, isn't there? You know? Like what is the part that gets somebody over that sense of internal crisis or confusion and actually that creates the courage to share what they're thinking?
Brian Eno speaks on stubbornness and attention in an interview on Apple Music.
I think a lot about attention. Where does your attention go? Your attention in a capitalist society is the most valuable thing about you. That's what everybody wants. So it's important to engage your attention all the time to tell you what you should be interested in, what you like, what you want to do. And to do that, you have to disengage your attention from where it wants to be. You don't have to plan to do that, but just the fact that you're flooding somebody with 5,000 adverts a day, which is apparently what we on average see each day, 5,000 other claims on your attention, apart from the things that you voluntarily choose to look at. All the time, each of us is drowning in a kind of mesh of things saying, you should be thinking about this, you should have an opinion about this, you shouldn't like that, you should not even know about that. You know, when kids start sort of looking around and finding that they like this or that or the other, and it isn't on the grid, they don't get a lot of encouragement for it. Those are the people we should be encouraging. The people who aren't sort of riveted to their TikTok.
They're still exercising free will.
Or free wanting, free love, actually, in the old-fashioned sense of that. Stubbornness, I keep going back to that because I just was so stubborn, I remember when I was young. I just was so interested in some things and I wanted to pursue them, whatever everybody else was doing. But I didn't have anything like the pressure that somebody who's young now would have.
When I perform live, I definitely have certain times where it goes well.
Okay.
And then I have certain times where I'm like, I'm glad I did that, but it was awkward. Because when I think about playing live, for me, it's all about momentum. It's like, if I'm having a few good performances in a row, I start getting confident.
Right.
But when you have that awkward experience, how you have processed that in terms of dealing with that, you know, quote unquote failure.
So like at the end of January, I had a really awkward performance, and
interesting.
I think and then like 2 or 3 days afterwards, I had the best performance I ever had, like in my life. It was really, really good. But the awkward one, during the performance, I was like, shit, this is like being really awkward. What can I do? And like a lot of thoughts were racing in my mind. And at the moment, what I thought was, okay, so these people didn't really come to see you. They came here for maybe other people on the open mic. They just came because they were curious or stuff. But maybe these people can like your stuff. And if you really present your better version possible, given like the circumstances and given the whole environment, maybe you will win some of these people back to your side, you know? And the awkwardness basically just transformed into like a process of trying to capture the audience for a while. Although like the whole circumstances weren't ideal, I was actually trying just to focus on that moment, that specific moment, like trying to be really mindful of what I was doing.
Yeah, just because you mentioned the next show being really good as well. I'm just wondering what that feeling's like. You know, I talk a bit on my channel about the creative flow state, and maybe it's linked to that a bit.
And so that show specifically was the first show I had like 45 minutes for myself.
Wow.
And so it was like this huge step, and I really had to like hone in on it and be mindful. And I took a deep breath right before the first lyric, the first sung part, the first part where I sing. And then like I felt it's very much what you were mentioning about the flow state. Like I knew where everything was. I understood the stage completely. And then I even called some of my friends like on stage to sing, and this was all planned. But some of them like mismatched the microphones. And then at the beginning of one of my tracks where there is like this bigger instrumental roll, I went to the microphone, I put it at the right place, and then I went back, you know, so I was in a complete state of awareness of my surroundings.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was great. Like the flow state is really, it's nice.
You know, I gave up advertising. I wanted to do something that was meaningful to me. I looked around like, that's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Mark from Soft White Underbelly discusses his journey through resistance and the power of finding purpose in your work.
When I first started, I was really shy, and this is going to be really hard. I decided this was my project. This is what I'm going to do. But when I first started, it was like, man, this is not my personality type, to go up to strangers and tell them what I want to photograph you. That was so hard. But now I've gotten so good at it that it's a breeze. You know, I got to a point. I remember early on, I was just like so nervous to do this, to walk up to a stranger in a casino in Las Vegas and say, hey, I think you're interesting. I'd like to photograph you. That was the first one I did. And then by the end, I was like, I remember I wanted to photograph the Hells Angels, the motorcycle gang up in Oakland is like their main headquarters. And I just flew up to Oakland. You know, you can't really arrange that. You can't call them up on the phone and say, hey, I'm a photographer in LA. I want to photograph you guys. That's just not going to happen. So I just flew up there, and it was a morning, and I ring their buzzer at their headquarters in Oakland, and no answer. It's like 9:30 in the morning. I ring it again, nobody answers. I ring it a third time, and somebody comes. Oh, this junkyard dog of a biker opens the door and says, "What the fuck do you want?" And I'm like, well, I start telling him. He just slams the door in my face. He goes, "Fuck off!" And he slams the door. Like, that didn't go well. But I've done this so much now that I'm so good at it that I knew to give him some time, allow him to say no. I'm not going to force him, I'm not going to pressure him. Went across the street, there's a Mexican restaurant that was serving breakfast. I got breakfast for a bunch of guys, and I brought it over, and I ring it again. He opens the door, and I had breakfast for him. And eventually they let me in, and we chatted, and I eventually photographed the president, the head of that chapter, Cisco Valderrama and Flash, and this guy's name was Marvin. And it was a great portrait. I'm proud of it. It was like I made that happen because of my ability to just go up to anybody.
I think now, like, I don't know what other people are doing, but now I feel a lot more vulnerable in my work and like in what I've been doing. So I completely understand stepping into the public realm with that, because it's just you. Whereas with the magazine, it was me and my team, and I had them to back me up, and I had them to like encourage me or tell me this doesn't work or this is working. And
community artist Chloé talks about building a small group of trusted friends around your work and the importance of protecting your process away from the needs of distribution.
If it's just you, I understand that sense of like, oh no, well, if someone critiques me, they're critiquing me, not just my work. It's like, it feels quite personal. But I don't know, like it feels quite restrictive right now, because everyone's kind of only medium is just post on Instagram or something, or or like post on a website that no one's going to look at, or like film the entire process on TikTok for someone to copy. Like, I don't know, it just feels a very strange time. So right now I'm just kind of, for me personally, I'm keeping it to myself, and maybe in the future, like maybe post on Instagram under a pseudonym so no one knows it's me. And see how people take it. But yeah, like I don't know about advice, but maybe just have a group of like your inner circle that you trust, like 2 or 3 people just to talk to, bounce back and forth, because that's always helped me. It's just the people you know are actually there for you, and not gonna be like, why is that font like that, you know?
Yeah. Coming back to what you said at the end there, I think there is another side to feeling that pressure that we need to, like I'm a songwriter and I like to play piano and I like to just do it. And there's part of me that wants to go and, perform that or put the music out. And that is part of it. But also there's a kind of pressure to do that I think you have to kind of protect the process from. Does that resonate with your process at all?
Yeah, I think there's something in there. It's like, it's not real until I show it to someone. You're not validated in your work until it's been put out there. Whereas like, well, if I made it, then it's real. Yeah, there is absolutely a pressure to, because everyone wants someone to say like, oh, that's really good, That's all we want. It's like, oh, that's really good. Like this thing that you worked on for like 2 days, it's really good. It's like, that's, I think everyone's kind of scared to admit that validation is a key factor in a motivator in creating your work. Because, like, I think it's good. What do you think, But then obviously it's conflicted with that sense of vulnerability and like critique. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but it's kind of, for me at least, like going back to what is my creative process for me and what is my creative process that I'm willing to share and put out there and maybe want to be perceived, I guess.
There's so much onus placed on the digital space these days. And I think it's, in some way, it's because it's very low friction to make a video on your phone and then put it out in an online space. And I think there's not enough focus being put on that real world space, or there's just a huge amount of opportunity there, I think.
Community artist David talks about the power of starting local and operating from the real world first.
I built my following, which is like quite substantial now. I built that following starting with a very, very local, small audience of people who were just seeing my work in my local area during the pandemic, and everything has built from that. Your day one supporters are your most important people. You must nurture them because you have to prove them right. I think it's so difficult to get followers online because we it's a big decision. Like, do I push this blue button that says follow on it? And because I don't want to follow too many people. And what happens is so often what we do as well, we look at the numbers and go, oh, they've only got 700 followers. That's probably not worth me following. Your day one people who did take that risk of going, oh, they've only got 700 followers, but you know what? I like this work. I'm gonna go for it. And they click follow. You can't let them down, because what most people will do is they'll go, oh, I've only got 700 followers. And then they'll stop posting and they won't be consistent. And then they'll stop making the work that they love. And then they just filter off into the background. And then that's why it's hard for anyone to gain followers, because so many of these early accounts, it's like an elephant graveyard of the average podcast lasts 6 episodes. Because we get really excited and we go, oh, I'm doing this podcast, and then not many people listen, and then we stop making it. So you've got to make 100 podcasts.
And then we think they're bad. Yeah. And then we actually think that it was a bad idea, which it wasn't necessarily a bad idea at all. It's just, it's really hard to keep making something in a private environment, in your house or in a indoor studio or whatever, not have any interaction from other people really who are going, oh, that was good, that wasn't good, or whatever. And then to just keep doing that. That's a really hard task people are setting themselves. And then it comes back to taking it out to the public and getting that feedback and planting those flags and letting us because for as many people that just ignore it or don't respond to it, you need all of those to find your people. You're not going to find your tribe without being ignored by 90% of people who see your early stuff.
Honestly, I am an introvert at heart, so it is definitely a stretch.
Community artist Tanner speaks on taking leaps as a self-described introvert.
I noticed in putting out my most recent single, just kind of sharing it on social media and putting it on the platforms and letting people know that it existed, that I existed. There was kind of a moment where it was tensing up, what's going to happen? How are people going to react? That unshakable horror of being perceived.
Yeah.
And luckily, I was met with incredibly positive reactions, and everybody that listened to the song was super into it. And I think little experiences like that kind of build off of one another. I know that I'm putting out stuff that's worth listening to. So with the next project, there's kind of a precedent set of, okay, people are into the sound, and I've got something going, I've got something happening. And it's just, it's making me more willing to make that stretch and to take that leap of faith, which is not to say that it comes without intense anxiety in moments, Every instinct in me would love to just stay in this room at this computer and just do my thing. But I need to see people. I need to see people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I guess, it's I don't know if I'm an introvert or extrovert or where I'd sit on that, but it's I know that I really don't like the feeling of sometimes taking my work out. But once I've kind of done that, I always feel it feels great,
Yeah.
And as you say, it's like a momentum building. Is I like what you said there around momentum, because that really chimes with my own experience as well. It's all about momentum for me.
Yeah, I found that the mind builds up a lot of stories around what it thinks the future will look like. It extrapolates a lot, and it likes to create the scariest possible scenario. And I think that's for the purpose of protecting us against future pain. But in my experience, more often than not, it just paralyzes me,
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the clips there and the conversations. And yeah, again, do come check out those full-length conversations at the link below. If you're interested, it's all completely free. So finishing now with the 2 kind of tips that I wanted to bring from my own practice. And the first one around this is based around the headline of just the importance of momentum. Momentum to me is about our ability to almost trick ourselves into taking bigger steps with our work by starting really small and then putting things in the calendar that are consistently going to kind of create steps up to those larger challenges. As a pianist, for example, this could look like organising yourself to have some structured lessons with a teacher, then working up to putting a date in the diary to play for 10 minutes, even if it's going through your scales, on maybe one of those public pianos that you might see in a train station or something. Then putting another date in your diary where there's an open mic that have a piano and you can go and, play some of your songs there. And finally, putting that largest step on the ladder so far, perhaps, where you think, okay, there's a night here where I'm going to go, I know that I'll have 15 minutes and I'm going to go and perform some of my own original music here, and that could be months off, but we've put on the calendar these steps that we're going to work up to, and the inevitability of time and then the building of that momentum is going to take us towards achieving those larger goals over time.
About that, to not think of himself. See, that goes back to what we were saying, like people just start thinking of themselves too much.
John Frusciante interview from 1994.
I don't think it's so much that they become conscious of the world of video and the world of this and that and the world of fame. They just think of themselves, and no matter who you are, whether you're a rock star or you're a garbage man, if you're thinking of yourself all the time, you're not going to be very good at what you do.
So as I warned you, this last tip is going to perhaps be the most esoteric one that will be introduced in the video today, but I think it's really interesting and can be really useful, and it's something that I'm putting under the headline of the power of the decentralized self. Although this sounds a little bit crazy really, it's actually very simple. The ultimate goal here is recognizing that nobody else really cares. A lot of the suffering we create around this stuff is wrapped up in our ego, and that's all completely usual and fine and normal. But the superpower here is to try and move beyond that, to recognize the smallness and the way that suffering is and those sorts are only centralized within your experience, and yet by recognizing that, just have the ability to move past it. When I think about ideas of failure even, and how much we think failure, we might have a fear of failure or think they're going to actually affect us, we can think of maybe like a good example of a performance where someone, quote unquote, failed. I think an interesting example that a lot of people might recognize is the most recent time when Frank Ocean did Coachella. Why I use this as an example is because it was massively hyped, and it's like so many people really seem to care about they cared about that work. Fair play, that music meant something to them. So the pressure on Frank to do a good performance, we can recognize that if we were, if I was Frank Ocean, I probably would have felt a lot of pressure, but it seemed that, as I say, I don't know what his internal experience was like really, but it seemed like he just didn't necessarily feel like he had to fulfill the expectations of what other people's expectations of what that was going to be. We can just recognize with that although there was kind of a little bit of a storm in a teacup about how it was maybe even rude of him not to do certain stuff, or how he wasn't, his performance wasn't good, blah, blah, blah. Although there was all that stuff surrounding it afterwards, if we jump forward a few years and we recognize where we are now, all we can really see with that is that actually perhaps it's made Frank Ocean feel a little bit more free. Next time he performs, there'll be less expectation. He can probably feel more free in that. And yeah, people will just be carrying less of their own baggage in terms of expectation in that performance. So although at the time it was maybe the epitome of like, oh, someone's failed at a huge performance where there's loads of pressure, actually now where are we? You know, we're at a space where it definitely doesn't really matter. And if anything, it's made him more free. So yeah, if we can actually hold that idea close to us when we're maybe having some nerves about going to do a performance or taking our art out of the house in some way, you know, going to do some street art or whatever it is, if we can hold that idea kind of close to us of like, this thing that I'm going to go and do this evening or tomorrow, it actually exists in a tiny slice of time of my life, and all the nerves and stuff around it are actually really just completely centralized to my own experience as well. So just if we can just zoom out, and we can quite easily recognize that it's probably a storm in a teacup. We probably can try to rationalize how small this stuff is, and allow that idea to kind of allow us to transcend beyond those nerves a little bit. Right, with that said, I'm going to wrap the video here. Thanks to all the people who did come over to the newsletter and check out the interviews from the last video. I appreciate people taking that step, and do consider coming and checking those out if you have enjoyed some of the clips from it today. Thanks to the paid supporters. It matters a lot that you're paying to support this work, and it gives the ability for me to do the kind of more side project or more grounded kind of build out of this other aspects of Creative Minds here. So thanks to the paid supporters. And yeah, there's another video on screen which aligns with these ideas around which I'm going to put on, which is around self-doubt, aligning with these ideas around nerves. And yeah, with all that said, thanks for following, and yeah, peace, good luck in your own work, and speak soon.